Hi everybody. So in our previous videos, we talked about how WAV files go into tracks and then tracks go into segments. In this video, we're going to explore some of the extra features of segments themselves. So remember that here we have one segment which contains 3 music tracks. I'm going to delete this empty one here. Again, right-clicking is your friend, so you can delete a track if you want to, and then we have 2 WAV files on tracks. And if I wanted to, right now, I can delete this one too because I'm just using this one up here. I mentioned before that segments had special features. The 2 features that you'll see here are these green markers and red markers. The red marker defines where our reverb tail starts. So I'm going to go ahead and define in my segment here, I want to define the tempo. So I know that this is 145 because I did this in my DAW, and the time signature for Holst Mars is 5/4. And you can see now the individual beats. If you're not seeing beats up here, you can switch between beats and seconds. So I want to go to bars and beats. I can also snap to my bars and beats, and I have 2 bars with a 1 bar reverb tail. So I'm going to set the red marker to the start of bar 3. So if I play this back, you can kind of hear that that's where the downbeat would be for the next section, and I have that long reverb tail that would overlap into the next phrase, which is nice. There is also something called, so that, by the way, that reverb tail marker is called the exit cue. In Wwise, the exit cue typically refers to where that reverb tail starts. In addition, the exit cue is where the next piece will begin, because that's the overlap with the next piece, is that reverb tail will overlap with the new piece that's coming in. So this represents 2 things. It represents where the reverb tail starts and also where the next piece will begin. There's a green marker at the front of this, which also does something similar to the exit cue or the reverb tail marker, but it's used for before your piece enters. So it's kind of like the opposite of a reverb tail. So for instance, if your piece has a pickup note, so sort of on the and-a-4 going into the downbeat, you might set this up so that it would you'd place that on your downbeat or where you want the music to sync. Or you might have a drum fill or a percussion roll, like a timpani roll, into the downbeat. You'd actually put that outside of the loop, and it makes it really easy to put pickup notes. So if this piece had a pickup note, I could use the control key to kind of move that to where maybe this was the drum fill into the downbeat, and that can be kind of useful. So it's almost like thinking of it as the reverb tail that would be at the beginning or before the downbeat. So it's called the entry cue, and it's only used if you were adding a pickup note or a pickup bar into a phrase, or like a drum fill into a downbeat or something like that. Not used very often, but occasionally, and those are stored inside the segment itself. So again, if I have multiple tracks, if I add another track here, it's stored across all tracks. So if I move the reverb tail to a different place, it's going to be stored across all the tracks that I have. In the next video, what we're going to be talking about are how segments then go into what are called playlists, and I can have segments back to back. You can think of segments almost like musical phrases in a way. Some other settings that you may have noticed along the way, we have general settings, conversion, effects, all these different settings up here. And this is where we can enter things like tempo. We can assign it to a different bus. If we want to submix all the music to a separate bus, we could do that. We would have to set that up in the mixer hierarchy, but then we could select it here. There are also some other parameters like low pass filter or high pass filter and a general voice volume. Now, the only thing that you have to kind of look out for is that if I select a track here, the settings, it's kind of like an inspector for the track. So if I adjust the volume of that track, then I go over to the segment, it's going to, we won't see it on the segment, but it will propagate up. So because I change the volume of this, it will then keep going up in the chain. So the other thing to kind of keep in mind are these are child objects of the segment. So if we go up, these are parents and these are children. So if we go down, it's children, and up is parents. So when I start creating other structures, like for instance, when I right click on this, if I want to create a new track, it would be a child of the segment itself. Again, when you're creating tracks and things like that, best to go in and label exactly what they are. So that's easier to kind of read what they are. But you can kind of see from the icon, oh, this is a single track because it has a single waveform. This is a segment which can contain multiple tracks, so it has multiple stacked waveforms on top of it. So in the next video, what we'll do is start putting these phrases together so that we have a playlist of segments. And then the video after that, we'll talk about switching between one playlist and another.